we did not know about, but there is some type of a Utah code that when a ballot box is outside of a town hall, you can't do any speaking engagements there politically, and that would be Republican and Democrat, I'm sure, and unaffiliated. Anyway, so Joey and Deidre, I'm sure they've known for a while. That's my opinion. The timing was at 9:00 a.m. this morning. So we had 30 minutes after Bridget called me to figure out what we were going to do and how do we do it. And so we ended up here. We do a lot of political events anyway. We just did something for Brett just the other evening. So anyway, welcome. And I'm just going to be monitoring the door. We're hopeful that other people show up. But thank you for coming in support of Phil Lyman. I'm going to hand this over now to my husband. We are live recording this. So if everybody could just mute their phones. We're going to push it out on a media platform called KMMU. It's Main Street Media Utah. It actually is internet radio station that is the other side of getting the news that is all true. It's ran by Doug, and for some reason I can't remember his last name, probably because I haven't seen him in a bit, and Dwayne Benson. And Dwayne Benson actually runs a lot of the platforms for all of the trustworthy politicians. So again, welcome. I'm going to hand this off to Jim. And again, if everybody can just mute your phone because we are live recording it. We're hoping to get it out on Phil's Facebook. But again, the platform to rewatch and share, it's KMMU.com. And I have the link ready to go. So for any of you that can't remember it, because there's going to be so much information, just let me know and I can text it to you. Just need your cell phone number. So I'll hand it off to Jim Gagan. Again, thank you, and thank you
for hosting this.
Hi, everybody. I'm just going to run through a couple of things real quick before we bring Phil up. These are the candidates that we're supporting right now. Most of them, I think, are here. Jeff Pierce is running against Luke Cyril. Luke's got some issues. You really need to look into what his voting record is. And he puts out a wonderful campaign about how he's for the elderly and he's going to save the valley, and he's really not. He's just voting basically party line, big developer, not great. He's a career politician. He's been in politics since I think he was in high school. Not exactly what we need. This kind of shocked me. I looked him up, and Jeff answered all the questions honestly and openly, and Luke didn't even bother to respond. And that's from the Salt Lake Trib, and they're not exactly a conservative newspaper. Sheriff Rigby, like him personally, I don't necessarily know if he's the right choice right now. He's got a lot of issues that are sort of bubbling up, and right now, Sheriff Hales is running, so something to consider. My hard part with him is he took a full-time job at BYU until he got called out on it. And his excuse was, well, I've got bills because I got a lot of kids. Okay, still doesn't mean you shouldn't be my full-time sheriff, and you shouldn't be taking my sheriff car that the taxpayers of this county pay for and driving it all the way back to Provo and back every day, which is, 60, 70 miles round trip? Rachel is running against Vance, and she's got some issues in her closet as well. So she is very much involved with making money on the development in our valley. And I'm not keen on hyper-development in our valley. I don't like the bypass. There's a lot of things that I don't think are working. And we've got a candidate that I think better represents us. Brett is a good guy. He's conservative. He's the only GOP candidate right now at the convention. He didn't buy signatures. He didn't try to get on any other way but old-fashioned way. He's been canvassing, knocking doors. I think he's got the right thing for, the right stuff. There you go. Phil's running against Celeste. Celeste is a politician that's been anointed by the party. I'll go through a little bit of that.
I love that picture, by the way.
That one?
Yeah.
You look kind of rugged. Some of the issues that come up with Celeste is she talks a good game, but she doesn't vote a good game. So if you look at this is from the Heritage Foundation, and this is how they rated our politicians in Utah. And she's a dumpster fire. She's at 67% by their ratings. Here's an easier way to look at it. I think if you're a conservative in the Valley, she's probably not the one that you're going to vote for. This is her immigration report card from a group that I don't know if it's on there or not, but it's Numbers USA, I think is what it is. And this is her rating with them. Not exactly great if immigration is concerned, and it is for us in this valley anyway. There was also the Norman Amendment to one of the Senate bills, or one of the House bills, and she voted against it. And the things she voted against were the Norman Amendment was going to block funding for DEI, for transgender pediatric care. I don't know exactly, how that works, but she voted against it. She has a lot of progressive pet projects she's voted for, and she also isn't always 100% honest. She skirts the issue. She's running, she was in CD2, or Congressional District 2. Now she's in Congressional District 3, running against Phil. And she claims that Trump endorsed her, but that was the last time she ran, and it wasn't in this district. And he's conspicuously absent in endorsing her this time. Celeste also voted for the kill switch in the cars when that came up. That means they can shut your car down because they think you're tired, or they don't like where you're driving, or they don't, who knows, but they're tracking you 24/7. And all cars in 2026 currently have to have that enabled that are sold new in this country. And she was a proponent of it. She also loves big data. She's voting against really Salt Lake, or the Great Salt Lake. It's, Box Elder is very close to where they're going to build that, or that data center is very close to the Salt Lake. They're going to suck up 94 million gallons or 95 million gallons of our water. And they say it's a closed loop. Great, even if it's a closed loop and you didn't lose any, which isn't true, it's going to spin around in their data center. It's not going back into the Great Salt Lake. It's used to cool the processors that they need. It's 62 square miles of processors, and that's just one of the data centers. So that's not great. She also voted against releasing the sexual harassment allegation database in Congress. Why? Because she needs to protect her cronies, and she was probably told to vote that way. The Norman Amendment, again, defunding pediatric gender-affirming care, she voted against that. So she voted to spend money on it, basically. So when she tries to be a conservative and say, hey, I'm against big spending and that, she's really not. She's just a go along, get along, like to stay in Washington. Now I'm going to bring up Phil. Come on up.
All right.
Thanks, Phil.
Well, thank you, Jim and Lori, for letting us move to your house here at the last minute. And as I'm looking around the room, thank you to everybody for, being involved in this process. Honestly, a last minute snafu like this, it's just par for the course. It's almost validating that we're on the right path and that things are going in the right direction. And it's every day. Every day there's a new crisis that comes up. It's like, did you see what Phil Lyman's trying to do? And we're just out here, minding our business, running a clean election. and really trying to spread the word about America being a free country, right? So my sister Lynette is here, and she lives up in Oakley. Thanks, Lynette, for coming down, and Matt and Lynette Bayless, and of course Jody. She is my secret weapon. Yeah. I don't know if she's a secret, but she's definitely an ally and a friend, and we put on a lot of miles together, and I really appreciate Jody. Okay, so I don't know how many of you remember the movie The Sting, Robert Redford. There's a point there where J.T. Hooker, Robert Redford, he's getting beat up by Lanigan, saying, how does your boss do it? Because he just got beat in cards. How does your boss do it? And Redford says, he cheats. He's like, duh, of course he cheats, just like Lanigan cheats. I was in an interview earlier this week with the Provo Daily Herald, and they said, in your race for Congress, is there anything that you learned through the governor's race that has been helpful, informative to you in this? And I said, they cheat. I'd like to sugarcoat it. I don't know how to tell you otherwise, but and in a myriad of ways. And this is the thing that I've said a long time on the elections. If you're a CPA, someone asks, do they cheat? The right question is, could they cheat, and what controls are in place to prevent it? In Utah, we do not have controls to prevent cheating. All of the information is managed by the lieutenant governor. She qualifies the candidates. She prints the ballots. She mails out the ballots through your county clerk. She oversees all of that operation. She reports the votes. She certifies the votes. She maintains the records after the vote so that you can't get any of those records. We ask to see the governor's signatures, and it's a lot easier to talk about signatures than it is to talk about votes, because votes are an anonymous ballot. There's really not a lot you can prove, but signatures you can actually prove. And in 2024, there was a criminal investigation going on in Washington County against a certain senator, and he was using the same signature company as the governor. And they disqualified a quarter of his signatures as fraudulent. So the CPA, and this was not malicious at the time, it was like the CPA says, well, you've got two separate clerks basically validating the same set of data. What did our state clerk do? Can we look at those ballots to see what was disqualified? No, you may not look at those ballots. In fact, how dare you ask or those signatures? How dare you ask to look at those signatures? Some of the people that signed that petition may be battered spouses who have requested to be, it's like, well, we're not trying to attack those people. And this is, I guess, what I'm getting to. This is a tactic. When someone asks for the truth, the first thing to do is to attack them. And pretty soon you have it all over. Conservative people who have brought up a legitimate question end up apologizing. Oh, I'm sorry, I was not trying to endanger, the people who are on the registry list for, to be protected from their spouses. I wasn't trying to do that. And I see that over and over and over. It's really a pattern. They attack, they reverse it, and pretty soon they become the victim of this. It's like, look how much money you're costing the state of Utah. Look what you're doing to the state of Utah. You got Deidre Henderson out there saying, trust the government. Don't trust the doubters. Don't listen to them. Trust the government. And they're undermining trust. And so this has been just an ongoing theme for a very long time. It's not a crisis of trust. It's that we trust people who are not trustworthy. And that's a serious epidemic that we have in America if we're forced to trust people who are simply not trustworthy. And in the whole scheme, and I don't know how high up this goes. We tend to think that we're talking kind of a local issue of, well, this person is not telling the truth. Well, you get further up and further up and further up, and you find out that there is a global agenda to destabilize America, to institute programs that are not in our best interest, that we would never ever vote for. And this idea of government by consent becomes really, really important, because what they do when they marginalize your vote is they remove the barrier that keeps them from doing these things. Because now they give the appearance of consent. And I like Kevin O'Leary. I've liked Kevin O'Leary for a long time. Mr. Wonderful, Shark Tank, Mr. Box Elder data center guy. I like Kevin. In fact, I don't know if you guys remember during the Bud Light, Dylan Mulvaney thing, he came out, he said, most people that I know, they want to buy a beer and not have to have the discussion about politics when they're buying their beer. That's what I want for people. Well, it's the same way with our data. I want to talk about computers and data in the future without having to talk about Governor Cox and Spencer, and Mike Schultz and Stuart Adams, or whoever might be on that list of people. And so it was interesting last week when Stuart Adams had suggested that they decrease that by 75% from 40,000 acres down to 10,000 acres or something. And the response from Kevin O'Leary was very interesting to me. It was, hey, we had a deal. This is like me buying a house and then you tell me I get to live in the toilet upstairs. I had a deal with Spencer Cox. I had a deal with Stuart Adams. I had a deal. And then he said, and in Box Elder, it's unanimous. It was unanimous. Everybody wants this. All three commissioners. And so all of this, if nothing else, we're paying attention. We're watching and we're saying, this is an interesting development. This development this morning is interesting. It's just, you take notes. Like, okay, well, when I first got the call, I said, well, we've got the First Amendment on our side. It says we can assemble. But none of us are out here looking for, to make a big issue of these things. It's like, okay, well, if you tell us that, to do this, we can't be within 150 feet of a drop box, maybe we should get rid of that drop box or limit it to one day instead of a whole month long. But all these things are very informative. Now, I want to talk about Congress a little bit. The things that I hear about when I go around the district, CD3, water is almost always top of the list. What are we going to do about our water situation? Well, I was on the Water Development Commission for 6 years. As a county commissioner in San Juan County, I was involved in water for the 8 years that I was county commissioner. And before that, I got involved with the Utah Navajos on the Utah Navajo water settlement. And this was back in 2005, 2006. And I was just a young CPA in Blanding, and I had friends who were in the Navajo community. Utah had just resigned as the trustee of the Utah Navajo Trust Fund, and so I was trying to wrap up a nonprofit there, UNDC, that my dad had been very involved in. I thought, okay, well, I owe it to my dad, I owe it to the community. Let's see if we can wrap this up. Instead, we spun it up into what we thought might be the new trustee for the trust fund, might be able to manage the water for the Utah Navajos. The net result of that was, many trips back to Washington, D.C., out of my own pocket, paying for those folks to go back and testify, writing the legislation, and just a few years ago, we finally got the water settlement done. Mitt Romney was the one that took the victory lap for that, but he didn't start it, and he didn't finish it, but he was there, and I appreciate the work that he did on it. Anyway, when it comes to water, I understand water. I understand what's at stake. If we want to solve our water problems in Utah, it's going to be a combination of things. Probably the first thing is desalination down on the other end of the pipeline in California, so that they don't have this claim on Utah to say, you owe us water, whether you have it or not. And that's what the Colorado River Compact basically says. They talk about paper water or wet water. And so we've got paper water, it's on the compact, but California says, you owe us real water, wet water, whether you've got it or not. And so Utah ends up getting really squeezed by that. And we see it in some of the policies. When we talk about saving the Great Salt Lake, what we're really talking about is saving what's left of Lake Bonneville. It's a terminal lake. It's a big order. But by making that the crisis, it justifies going out and buying up water shares from farmers all across the nation, all across the state, on the northern end especially. And the legislature allocated in 2023, I believe it was, $40 million to save the Great Salt Lake. And 2 weeks after the session ended, they gave $40 million to the Wilderness Society and the Audubon Society. Now, these organizations are our enemies. They sue our small counties. They harm Utah. They're ideological. They're funded by Arabella. They're not Utah-based. But we gave them $40 million. They went out and started buying up water shares from the farmers. Now, if you're a developer and you want to develop, you've got to come and prove that you've got some water shares. Right now, Salt Lake City is the largest owner of water rights in the state. Not the county, but the city itself. They own what you call extraterritorial water rights, probably out in this area all the way to Wyoming. And if you're going to do development, you're probably going to be talking to Salt Lake City about that. If not Salt Lake City, you've got to go and talk to a farmer. So what is better than buying out your competition using the state legislature to do that? And I believe that that's what's happening. If you control the water in Utah, you control everything. And it's a huge play. And people know it. We know it instinctively, yet we're being a huge amount of effort to explain to us how it really works, how we're wrong about what we're seeing with our eyes and our ears, which is also a common thing. So water is big. If you take CD3, which is a very interesting district as well, all the way from Wyoming to Arizona and from Colorado to Nevada, 60% of the state. It's massive, but it's really beautiful. We were out in Vernal last night, and someone was saying, like, what do we have in common with St. George? And I said, well, actually, you have a lot in common with St. George. Those people, they kind of like freedom as well. And the one thing that CD3 doesn't have is any part of Salt Lake County, which is it's kind of a good thing, because we're not having to placate the truly left-leaning people in the state. It's a very conservative state. I think or district. I think it was Trump plus 40. It's like this is a conservative district. Where was I going with that? Oh, just the idea of this massive district and the shape of it. But if you take the upper Colorado River Basin and you overlay it on Utah, it matches almost exactly with CD3. And I don't know that they planned that. I doubt they did, but it's a beautiful thing. And for me, when I saw that, these are things that are near and dear to my heart. It's water, it's minerals, it's recreation, it's lakes, lake levels, and probably more than anything, it's the interface between federal jurisdiction and state jurisdiction. Federal ownership of land versus state jurisdiction. When you look at a map of the United States, you can find Utah, and that border means something. In 1896, when Utah became a state, we went from being a territory, a federal territory under the purview of Congress, to being a state where we have jurisdiction over our own affairs, over our education, our health, our energy production, our land, our water, all of those things. And that's really, really important. I fought those fights in the county commission. Then in the state legislature, I saw the perspective there as a legislator from those things. Being in Congress at the federal level, I believe I would be a very good advocate for state jurisdiction and for state legislatures and for county commissioners. Government is really a beautiful thing when it stays in its lane. When it goes out of its bounds, it becomes a real problem to people. And that encroachment that the state has allowed from the federal government needs to be reversed. And I think that needs a partnership between the congressmen and the state. We've had some good congressmen who have pushed back, and then we've had some other congressmen who have not tended to push back. In fact, it's almost as if they are working for the agenda that's coming through Washington, D.C. and through the global, United Nations and the 30 by 30 agenda and, so many of these other things that find their way in. So the public lands, the water, the housing and the development, when you come up here, nobody sees the problems of concentrated development more than you guys in this county, and it's an issue. You've got a lot of people. I can see why people would want to live here. I really can. So if they're coming organically, that's one thing. But if you've got developers who are artificially affecting the policies to push development into areas like this that the community would not organically choose, then we have a problem. And nowhere did we see that more than with the high density housing and the legislature stepping in and saying, look, if you don't want it, communities, that's fine. We'll just override you and we'll do it anyway, whether you like it or not. I've talked to a lot of developers that are saying, that was a great bill. Thank you. That was good. It's funny. In these committee meetings, we were in one of the committee meetings, and it was where we're going to give $25,000 to all the new home buyers, and I leaned over to my cohort sitting next to me, and I said, how many of the people in this room do you think are developers? And it was all of them. And they're my friends. I like developers. I like people that build things. I like construction. But do it on a level playing field. And our policies that we make drive high density housing. They drive commercial development. They especially drive government building development. And when you've got all your contractors that are making, that can build a government project at $900 a square foot, it's pretty hard to convince them to come and build a single family home for a family, at $300 a square foot, which still seems outrageous to me, but the 300 figure. So those policies actually affect our lives in a really significant way. Immigration is a big issue. We were talking about this just before. I come out early on, I said, these H-1B visas are a problem for Utah. My opponent, Celeste, came out and said, how dare he attack the sheep farmers of Utah? It's like, oh, well, I think you're mixing up these visas. I'm talking about the tech visas that are coming so many people from out of the country and displacing people who would like to have a tech job. But it's more sinister than that. If you look into China's agenda, it is to take over the technology of the United States. It is to become a world dominating power, and part of that is to push the United States out of that space. So the H-1Bs are for tech visas. The H-2A and the H-2Bs are for agricultural visas, which also have a lot of abuse and fraud going on there. Okay, I have just kind of like gone down this checklist, and I do want to see if there's any questions. And I'm so grateful to have Jeff and Brett and others that are here. And I told Jeff this morning, he said, is this where the party is? And I said, well, it is now, since you're here. So, and it was just a meeting up to that point. So, so are there any questions? Anything I can answer?
And can I just remind everyone, because we are recording it, so can you talk up? Phil's got the mic on him, but if you can just say it so that whoever we're live streaming it can hear, that'd be great. Or we can reiterate the question.
And feel free to, I can stop at any moment, so just, okay, it's all right.
Someone said that the federal government owns 67% of the land of Utah. Is that correct?
Yes.
And how can we get that back?
Yeah, in CD,
How can you fight the federal government and actually get that
yeah.
land back?
So CD3, it's more like 72%. You get down to Wayne and Kane counties, and it's 97%. They own like 3% of the land in those counties. So here's the thing on the ownership of property, the federal retention of their property. The Constitution says that they have a duty to dispose, and that is, but it doesn't say when. So when the Bears Ears National Monument was coming about, and I was right in the middle of that as a county commissioner, ended up going to jail over it, and I could tell that story too. But I was right in the middle of that whole discussion. Where was I going? The push to come to a deal with Congress, and Rob Bishop came and said, "Hey, you've got to do a compromise in San Juan County, otherwise you're going to get a national monument." Well, in my mind, it's like we're getting a national monument anyway. Obama already said he's going to do that, but he said we need to come to a compromise. And I said, "Oh, this is great. I would love to. Can you identify which 10 square miles you have identified for the forts, arsenals, dockyards, and other needful buildings?" Well, we'd love that. You know, going from 92% federal land ownership to 10 square miles in San Juan County would be a huge. Anyway, and Rob Bishop knew what I was saying, and he kind of finished out the language there of Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17, which says what the federal government can own. That said, Utah is a public land state. We have been for a very, very long time, since inception. The federal government has proprietorial interest in 67% of the land in Utah. So what does that mean for a state? If you go back to 1957 and 1956, there was an Eisenhower report that identified the level of jurisdiction that the federal government has over state lands. And in Utah, it was zero. Almost no jurisdiction do they have over federal land. Now, they do have title, which means that the state can't sell it. But we have jurisdiction, which means that the federal government can't trespass you for going on it or stop you from producing on it. And what does that do? It puts the management of the land in the hands of the state. And this has been my mantra. The state has management of these lands if they're willing to exercise their jurisdiction. When a few people have said, well, how could the state possibly manage all of that federal land? And I say, oh, they have these nifty little things called counties that were designed specifically for that purpose. It's like the whole business plan is in place. The contract was signed. It's all there. And yet we've accepted a federal narrative that they're in charge because they are supreme. They have the supremacy clause. And there's court cases that came out about validating that, like the Kleppe versus New Mexico case. Things like this that have validated this falsehood that the federal government can do whatever they want in Utah, and we are basically a vassal state to the federal government. I always go off philosophically on these things, so I apologize. But the bottom line is we do have jurisdiction in the state. We do have the authority to be our own, to dictate our own destiny in Utah. And it's almost, when we talk about federalism, the balance of powers, it's kind of a beautiful thing to say, okay, the federal government has a proprietorial interest. They can't keep us from using our land. The state has a jurisdictional interest. They can't sell the land. And who's the beneficiary in that case? You and me. We are the beneficiaries. We get to live in a state where we can actually go out, hike around, not feel like we're trespassing. We can enjoy our rivers and our streams and our lakes and our mountains and our canyons. And I think that's really valuable to Utah. In fact, I think it defines Utah in a large sense. So when I had a long discussion with Senator Lee just a few months ago, because he had his transfer proposal, and I said, Mike, it's a really strange world where Phil Lyman and Mike Lee are on opposite sides of transfer of public lands. But you've got an illegitimate governor who would give this to his cronies in a heartbeat. I've seen it, I've watched it. I cannot support it under this current administration. And a few years earlier, it had done a homestead bill that I really quite liked, because it said because it wasn't based on how much money do you have, and it wasn't going to the highest bidder. It was, if you want to build a house and you're willing to put in the sweat equity and the work, we can find federal land that's suitable for building, and you can basically homestead that land and, up to 5 acres and build a house on it. I like that bill. There was a similar one in Wyoming this last session. I wrote a letter in support of that. So, yeah.
In conjunction with that, how do we handle the policies of Forest Service and BLM who encroach upon this situation?
Yeah. So you go up here to up in the say Alta, up Little Cottonwood Canyon. They've got serious fire hazards going up there, and the reason being because the forests are not maintained.
That's right.
Right? And why are the forests not maintained? Because we're not allowed to even trespass on those forests. You cannot go in there. And so the county, the citizens are saying, we need to thin the forest. We need to do something for this forest. And it's like, well, you can try it, but you'll be prosecuted federally. You'll go to jail. And so we let our forest go. We took all the grazing out, which is one of the most healthy things you can do for a forest, is to graze it. And the Forest Service controls so much of that. A healthy forest will produce 20% more water than an unhealthy forest. So it's in our interest water-wise to have healthy forests, and we've proven it. In Colorado, they did a big study, and I think they came up with closer to 40% improvement in the water production off of a healthy forest, and that was over like a 40-year period. So the science is there, the technology is there, we have the ability to affect our forests, and we're kept from doing it in a un-American and not an organic fashion. And when it comes to the BLM, I was on a committee about the weaponization of the BLM, because we went through a period of time of, right after President Obama got in, you got Eric Holder as the Attorney General, and Ken Salazar, Secretary of Interior, and it was a brutal time. It was a brutal time in Blanding, and where I'm from, raiding the community, destroying the lives of people, and we saw it roll from there over into Nevada, and just kind of, they were just rolling over the top of people. And it wasn't until Trump got in that we could actually have some genuine discussion about the weaponization of federal agencies, which we were having. So the Bureau of Land Management has overstayed their welcome here. They're not managing grazing permits anymore. They're managing for conservation, and it's creating problems because that's not the way it was designed.
So doesn't the Secretary of Agriculture have oversight of that?
Forest Service.
The Forest Service, not the BLM?
Yeah, BLM is under, I think BLM's directly under Department of Interior.
So what is our protection? I witnessed in Idaho, around the ranch that we own, helicopters going out with a sprayer. They are starting to spray the land, the ranges in Idaho. I don't know if it's everywhere else, but that's our pristine water source. And I would have to get a FOIA request to find out what they are spraying and where they are spraying. But I saw it, and yeah.
I mean, I don't know what even to say about stuff like that, because you sound conspiratorial or something when you start saying, or they're doing this. But to the spraying, the chemtrails and different things. This has always been such an interesting discussion to me, because they're spraying our skies with poison. We should pass a law. And then you get other people coming out, that's ridiculous. You can't pass a law about that because it's not happening. It's like, well, let's pass the law then. It's no harm, no foul. If you're not spraying it, then let's just pass a law. Let's just say you can't spray poison on our land.
Well, I'll tell you what I did.
Seems logical.
What I did is I put it to John Curtis because he claimed he could work with the environmentalists and on this. And he was so upset with me. I asked him if he would carry a bill to protect us, and he was furious. He would not, you know, he is completely on the other side. He's not gonna do anything about it, so we need some protection somewhere.
We do, we do. This brings up, I'll just mention this really quickly. So yesterday I was out at my daughter's house, and we don't really watch a lot of TV, but she pulled up on YouTube, and the first thing that came up was a Celeste Malloy ad. And the sponsor was ACC PAC. Well, I know what the DOV PAC is, the Defending Our Values. That's Chris Stewart. That's her former boss that's just threw $1 million at her campaign, which seems odd that the person who had that seat is now paying $1 million to keep her there when at the same time they're saying, well, you know, we think Phil and Celeste are kind of the same. They're about the same, you know, just keep Celeste in there. They all think the same. Well, apparently not, because they want to spend a bunch of money. But the ACC PAC is John Curtis's PAC. So I looked that up, and whether my information is correct, $150,000 that they put in, which is the most they put into any race this year, to promote Celeste. It's like, why is and that's the conservation, it's the Conservation Coalition. You know, conservation shouldn't be a dirty word, but somehow it has the Marxist has overtaken that. And it's become kind of an interesting thing. So you've got John Curtis that is pushing hard to keep Celeste there. It's not because she's conservative. It's not because she's liberal. It's because they have deals. They have deals, and that's what's happening. But yeah, Mark.
Two-part question, if I may. On the homesteading on federal lands, why can't we do that on state trust lands and just do a 99-year lease? That's part one. Part two, House Bill 48, Snyder and McCall, wildlife urban interface, fire insurance going through the roof. I think they're going to impose that this coming year. I know that there's some people up here that in Timber Lake's $1,400 a month for fire insurance.
Really?
$800 a month, even in Heber. So given the federal nexus with state lands, and if the states come in to try and fight fires and then take control, I'm very leery of state leadership. The feds are ineffective in managing all the lands that we have, which I like, because Mother Nature's in charge. But what is the appropriate balance? The Monroe fire cost a lot of money. We've got a tinderbox this year, and what's the balance point? Because I like everything that you're saying about local control and so forth, but the local control wants to sell us out.
And why is that? Why do they want to sell us out?
There's a lot of money to be made.
There's money behind it. And in Utah, it's funny. I've got this lawsuit going on the voter lists, and I asked for the voter list in 2021 after the election. I was the vice chair of the Government Operations Committee. That was my job, is to see that we have. So I asked for that back when Deidre and I were friends, and that's kind of what started the separation there. But yeah, when we're saying why do people sell out, and where I was going with this is we've got the Public Interest Legal Foundation that does this all over the country, files these lawsuits against secretaries of state and lieutenant governors. And Christian Adams said, when he came out, I met with him that evening, he said, I'm just surprised how unsophisticated Utah is. And I said, you mean how cheaply they're willing to sell out? And he said, yeah, they'll sell out for a pat on the head. And that's kind of that's the odd part about this, is like, and so you get local leaders, it's like, what did you get out of this? They called me buddy, they called me their friend, or it's like, but you should get, I don't know. So yeah, the question is, why do our local leaders sell out? And there is a lot of pressure. I was a county commissioner, and honestly, most people want to get along with people, and if there's a nefarious person who genuinely has a scheme, they are going to be the most friendly, the most outgoing, the most take you to a jazz game. Come on, it's like, this makes sense. Let's talk, and that's why we have rules about receiving gifts and things like these things that are in place. It's like, we don't want our elected officials, dealing behind our back. That's what I said. I'm a team guy. I will support my quarterback. no matter what, he's the pick. But if I find out he's actually working for another team, then that creates a problem. And that's kind of where that's the dilemma I think a lot of us face in our communities is like, how did this happen? And I this is one of my mantras of my campaign is that bad policy hurts people. How did we get bad policy that hurts the very people that these people made a promise to protect and to support? And it comes back to, it's probably more nuanced than just money. And politics is kind of a blood sport, and you see the worst in everybody. But you do learn a lot about kind of the Marxist agenda that is rolling out in this country. It's a very real thing. I didn't answer your question, Mark, but
He knows the answer.
I've got time.
yeah.
One follow-up, mouth of Daniel Canyon, just right up the road here. The county does not have control over a mining pit that they want to put in, starting with 18 acres up to 400. Says they might go down to 7,000 feet. They've got a claim over in Goshen, 40 miles away. The well drillers report looks like they're trying to get down through quartzite, similar to the same rock formations out at Kennecott.
Mm-hmm.
So to get down to 7,000 feet, their mine would actually have to be 3 miles across. So the camel's nose is in the tent, and our county commissioners don't know what to do. We don't have state leadership that's stepping in and saying, slow thing, but it's bad policy. We've got the same thing with MIDA happening at Sundance, the mouth of Provo Canyon. The Osmonds want to put a 25,000 seat amphitheater in. It's really hard to know as a citizen how to slow some of these things down so we can have studies and make data-driven decisions instead of emotional or name branding.
Well, and you always get into a situation where, some people want this in the community and other people desperately want something different than that. Do you want growth or do you want it to stay how it is? And so you're always going to have this, conflict that exists. And the conflict is built into our government system. James Madison in his Federalist 10 said, our system is designed for a multiplicity of factions. It makes us stronger. But if you undermine the Republican element of that and turn it into you're a horrible person because you disagree with us, and we've already greased all of the skids, and we didn't come to your county commissioners, we went to the state legislature, and we took care of this at a much higher level. It's like it becomes, you can fight or not fight, but we're going to do what it is that we're going to do. I went to a seminar this last week, and one of the topics was why fight City Hall when you can be City Hall? And then when I read it, the first thought I had is why fight City Hall when you can buy City Hall? And that's what we're up against. It's like, and so you got good men like Jeff Pierce that says, I've got good ideas. I can influence people by telling what's going on. I saw a meme the other day that kind of reminded me of you, Jeff, and the guy said, my social disorder is that I believe that people listen to logic when I tell them. But so it is a real dilemma. I do want to talk just the wildfire threat is so real, and then the water on top of that. And again, I'm sorry I don't know more about the urban wildfire interface here as much as I've studied it in Little Cottonwood and Big Cottonwood Canyons. But you couple the wildfire danger with the genuine possibility that there will be no water when they go to fight those fires. You have a house that you put on a provisional permit up Little Cottonwood Canyon, and they can turn your water off, and they have, and you can go to the fire hydrant and there will be nothing there. That's a scary proposition. And all of these, yeah. And all these things are things that our grandparents would have looked at. And I love, driving into a valley like this, and you look around and you see, oh, there are some people that had some foresight here. There's some people that cared about this community enough to build reservoirs and canals, and you see the wheel rolls going. It's like that doesn't just happen. You don't just buy a wheel roll and it starts spraying water. That's like a whole lot of infrastructure that goes into that. And we can fix these problems if we come together and we have our discussions. Whether you're pro-growth or pro-staying how it is, communities can fix these problems internally, even if it creates some conflict. And what you don't want is the heavy hand of the state coming in on top of you, and especially if you find out that they are literally bought into something that happened at Davos, 2 years ago, and that they're part of that agenda. So, yeah.
Immigration is a real problem here in Utah. In fact, yesterday I drove down from Ogden to Provo. I was stopped 3 times on I-15, not during rush hour traffic, just because of the congestion. We have 80,000 vehicles that traverse Main Street in Heber City every day. I know we may not be officially a sanctuary state, but we're known as the most friendly state for inviting illegals to come here anyway, too. What can we do with, it's a real problem, and we're not going to be able to keep up with it.
Some of these things require like coming to a crisis. It's not sustainable, and it's like we'd like to forestall the crisis part of this, but I'm not sure that is in the works. And that's the Thomas Paine quote: "The closer a disease gets to a crisis, the closer it is to a cure." And it's in the final push when we get our victory. It's like we don't want to come to a crisis, but we will. We will on immigration if we don't do something about it. And I was texting somebody this morning. I said, if you point out a true fact of this, you incur the wrath of the disagree better crowd. And there's not a more vicious group that will come after you than those that are saying we need to disagree better. We need dignity in our dialogue. What it means is we don't want you talking about immigration this way. We do not want the truth out there. On immigration, on so many issues. And this is where, I say the left, but it's really just probably the left and the right. They talk about, trivial things as if they're really serious, and they talk about really serious things as if they're trivial, and they flip it this way and they flip it that way. And immigration is one of those that we need to have an honest discussion about what is this doing to our elementary schools, our health care, our communities, if we say that it's illegal to enter this country, without going through the due process, there's nothing wrong with that. That's not racist. It's like people say, well, I shouldn't get a ticket for rolling through a stop sign. There was nobody there. It's like, well, we don't have to change the law. You can say that, and maybe it doesn't get enforced or whatever. So you got all these elements of like, but we can't go and say, well, in Utah, it's okay to be here illegally because we've got big hearts and open arms, That's not okay. So we say it's against the law. The only crime needed for deportation is being in this country illegally. That is not a harsh statement. It's not a mean statement. It's a true statement. That's what's required. And then I got in a little bit of hot water in the debate when they said, how do you feel about building this big ICE center out in the West Desert? And I said, I'd prefer we just send them back home where they came from. Kind of a Trump moment or something. I don't. But wouldn't that be a better solution? I mean, or at least part of the solution. Maybe we say, well, maybe build a small ICE facility and send a lot of people back. And then people say, well, we should start with the real hard offenders. It's like, I don't know. It's above my pay grade. It's like if you came here illegal, if you snuck into the theater without a ticket, you have to leave. I don't know. So.
Well, along with that, I've been in Europe for a while there years ago, and I don't know any other country that doesn't expect people to come in, pay the laws, get the visas, whatever, and if they're not, they're illegal. I also don't understand why we bend over backwards to have to accommodate, particularly the Latino type things, where they have to speak the language, we have to accommodate. No, if they come to America, fine, if they come in illegally, but we still speak English. Doesn't mean we can't learn other
Still
languages,
America, yeah.
But we teach our schools English. If they want to come in, they need to learn English. But we seem to bend way over backwards and almost, expect that we have everything in Spanish as well as English equal.
Have any of you read the book? And
That's wrong.
I can't remember if it's The Secret Coup or The Hidden Coup. Have any of you read that book? So it's a new book. I just read it, and it's a good read.
Is it the silent coup?
Is it Silent Coup?
I think so.
It's the something coup. But it's all about immigration, and it comes down to things like Mexico officially and Latino legislators from Arizona in the House, in the Senate, saying we will re-establish California, Arizona, Texas as the 33rd state of Mexico. And we're going to do it through having babies. We're going to do it through moving in there. The Chinese say, if you're going to have birthright citizenship, we are going to come. We're going to sneak in, say whatever you have to get in, cover up that you're pregnant, get to the United States, have that baby, move back to China. You've got an American citizen, and we will. So if they're taking something and completely corrupting it and hijacking it to use against us, and we just go along, a Congress that can't distinguish between immigration and a hostile takeover is, it's not you. That is not somebody you want having those decisions. Yeah.
So I just had something to go along with that, just because we have a sheriff race going on, and the child trafficking is a huge part of that. I think they found 150,000 missing kids, but our sheriff hired somebody that was actually selling babes to an illegal child for sex. And so that's just a huge part of this that people don't realize. Like, these illegals, like, some of them were sold to come here or whatever, we need to get them back home safe, not here being taken advantage by our law enforcement.
Well, and this is a good point, because we say, well, we go along with this because we're compassionate, because we have big hearts. Look at what we're doing to children. Look at that is not compassion. That's falling for a lie that's being, shoved down our throats. And yeah, it's horrendous, some of the things that we find out. Yeah.
First of all, I would like to say I've gotten a lot of things in the mail. And for me, Michelle Kellogg nailed it. And the reason why is she said my qualifications, ... right down the list. Then she said what I will accomplish. And there's nobody else's picture on there, chumming, buddy with anybody on her own. She stood up and said, here's my qualifications, here's what I will accomplish, and vote for me, and I will, because you were clear and concise, and I didn't have to come to a 3-hour meeting to figure out what you're going to do when you get elected, which I'm going to make sure you do. Send me that and let me know exactly what I can expect, because it has been a wild and crazy fluctuation of I vote for somebody, I elect somebody, and then I find out they're going to put a bypass on Southfield Road, which had been under construction literally for 12 solid years. That was supposed to be the bypass, which is a bisection between us and Midway, and then it has never ever been functional. So nobody uses Southfield Road. They go down Main Street with those huge trucks because they can't, because it's under construction. So a bisect is going to be under construction for 20 years, which means somebody is getting paid to pave this valley so that somebody else who doesn't live here can go 75 miles per hour past our brand new $150 million schools in a school zone. Now, I know that there's nobody in this room who has read the code book that is in the library that is this thick. More people have read the Bible than they have read.
I would hope so.
Than they have read the Heber City codes. And not a single one of those codes is being followed by the state, by the federal, by local developers. But if you're a resident, the code officer can come to your house, and if you have dug a hole and hit a gas line, you will pay for all of that damage. So when somebody puts in a mine that's going down a mile into the ground and destroys the water quality, they go bankrupt, or they walk away, or they do not do a thing about it. But if you are a resident of a city and you damage some city property by planting a tree, you're going to go to jail because of that code book that no one has ever read until you personally local taxpayer do some damage. So why are developers allowed to just take off the topsoil, pile it up so that when the wind blows, we breathe it, or when it rains, it goes into our water system and it damages our lifestyle and we die of cancer because we can't breathe and we can't drink the water? We allow that. But, so I don't know what you can do as a senator. And I don't know I don't think our local elected officials can stop what's already in the pipeline here as far as development. But they're destroying my lifestyle every day by constructing, by paving over massive parking lots everywhere. And if it ever rains again, like it did in Texas, this is a funnel. I know that you can look out that window and see those mountains. And putting a freeway down on top of the aquifer and paving every single solid, except for the places where they've towed the topsoil off and then
Phil,
weeds.
what could you, if you go to Congress, what
Yeah, you're not
might you be able to help?
Thank you. Thank you.
help me.
Well, first of all, sorry, Michelle, I didn't acknowledge you before because I wasn't familiar, but thank you for doing a good phrase, for a good brochure.
And you know what? She knows what this is going on because she says.
Which gets us to the point of how do you fix this? You elect good people. And how do you elect good people? If the system is broken, you fix the system. So I was talking to the other day about consent. Consent. You do something with consent. It's very different than the exact same thing done without consent. And we could talk about some examples of that. Consent is a really important thing. And if something's happening that's like, we did not consent to this. If you look at the Revolutionary War, I was thinking about this the other day and kind of in connection with the data center. The Revolutionary War was not fought over taxation without representation. It was fought over being treated poorly. They had the right of quartering soldiers, but there's probably most people in the colonies that were like, well, I want to help the military. I'm a patriot. They can use my house, but when they start treating you poorly, when they start abusing you, that becomes a real offense. And that's why, the Declaration of Independence, the list of grievances, and it goes on and on and on. You read it and it's over and over and over and over. And what is your right? What is your duty when that happens? Is to find a new, system that secures your freedoms and your interests. So
It was given away years ago. It's gone.
Well, this is still America, and that's I guess where we're coming to this point. I truly believe that, and this is, again, your neighbor might disagree with your views of things like that, but when something happens that's wrong and it's not by consent and it's against the will of the people and it's harmful to the community, you have an obligation to show up to a 3-hour meeting and speak, or to go and vote and to talk to your neighbors and.
We vote where we can fix it.
Yeah.
because it's gone.
Well, the people that are there aren't fixing it, so
Yeah.
let's light it
Yeah,
up. You do
yeah.
it.
For Michelle, she gets to stay.
It does feel very discouraging. I will grant you that, but I believe that America is at a point, and we always are. Ronald Reagan, his time for choosing back in 19.
90, 80, 70.
So I think it was 60 something. Anyway, his time for choosing was real then, and it's real now. So we have a time for choosing, and we're either on the verge of seeing some really incredible changes, flushing out the deep swamp, flushing out the deep state, getting rid of these things, or losing it all. And I think it's still up to us. On consent, and talking about this issue, somebody said, well, you're giving your consent just by carrying your cell phone around. It's like, well, I do that voluntarily, and I realize I'm probably being abused even by doing that. But doing the same thing without me even carrying a cell phone, putting up flock cameras and listening to conversations and tracking my every move and putting a kill switch on my car, those things are not done by my consent. There's a big, big difference. So don't give up. And I appreciate your passion. I really do. Okay, Stephanie.
So I believe I've overheard you say that when you go to Washington, you're going to become a member of the Freedom Caucus.
Yes, if they'll have me.
Can you tell the room what exactly that means?
So the Freedom Caucus, probably a lot of you are familiar with the Freedom Caucus in Congress. And there's some people there that are real outliers, that maybe stir things up. But there's which I totally respect that too. But I see kind of three factions of the Republican House. You've got the MAGA wing, you've got the party wing, which is Mike Johnson, and then you've got the Freedom Caucus. And there's other caucuses, and there's a lot of, and they overlap 90% of the time. 90% of the time, they're all in agreement. They all want the same thing. They are Republicans, they're conservatives. But things like the food bill that came out, Anna Paulina Luna came forward and said, this is a good bill, or the farm bill. The farm bill is a good bill, but it leaves in the exemption, the legal immunity for the makers of pesticides. Now, I don't mind pesticides. I don't know much about it. It's not my world. But why would the manufacturers have legal immunity? We don't have legal immunity. We have to pay for what we do wrong, right? So Anna Paulina Luna came and proposed a bill to strip the legal immunity out, which passed. Celeste voted against that, and I'm not sure why. It's like, why would you vote against that amendment? That's, to me, what the Freedom Caucus, what they've said that they stand up for is the Constitution, for their constituents, and for freedom. I kind of like that. And if you stand up for the Constitution, you stand up for your constituents and freedom by default. But their loyalty is not to Mike Johnson. Their loyalty is not to Trump. Some of them take that, to one extreme or the other, for whatever, political purpose that they have. Nancy Mace was an interesting person in Congress, and she stirred up some things, but she did so much good when she was there. Thomas Massey brought some reforms in.
But he was brought out.
He was what?
Brought out.
May have been. And the thing that was always interesting to me was Massey seemed to have a personal thing going with Trump, which I thought, this is not productive for, handle that behind the closed doors. But so yes, I do like the Freedom Caucus, and to me, it's the ideology of the Constitution. So, yeah, Laura.
Kathleen first.
Kathleen first.
Similar.
Maybe the same.
Yes.
Yeah, if you're elected, you just said you don't know much about pesticides, but I think we can all agree it's not a great idea to be spraying them on school campuses and the parks, spraying conventional pesticides. And it has been proven to affect people's health and the
Oh, yeah.
environment and pollinators. So you don't have to be an expert on pesticides to understand that. If you're elected, could I please speak to you about maybe cleaning up what we're doing around Utah's children?
Yes. Yeah. No, when I say that's not it's not where I spend most of my time. I'm more on the economy side of things. But I am definitely a Make America Healthy Again person, and I am friends with Lori, so I know a little bit about pesticides. Mark?
One more. I attended Margot Oak's meeting last week, and we're AAA bond rated in Utah, but our citizens aren't. We've got a lot of debt load that's coming in. What would your priorities be back in Congress? I mean, what do you lose sleep over? What are the levers that you try and pull? What are your top 5 priorities? Maybe do a pitch to the listening audience.
I mean, I have a pretty good track record of standing up for families over the counties. I've always said at San Juan County, I'm more interested in the family's checkbook than I am the county's checkbook. It started before I was a county commissioner. They closed down the copper mine there, and the article that came out in the paper, and it was like a week before Christmas. And the article that came out in the paper was like, that's $750,000 of property tax revenue that we're going to lose. I was like, well, that's 600 families who just are looking for a new job, and it's like, do we not care about them? It's like all we worry about is the property tax revenue. It was a strange spot to be in. I believe in personhood. Meaning that when a person's born, they have rights, inherent, inalienable rights that happen just because of their birth or because of their conception. This is another thing that I don't want to get off here. People have said, well, Phil's weak on abortion. It's like, I have an unequivocal stance when it comes to, I believe that a person is a person at conception. I don't make exceptions for rape, incest. I don't make any concessions. Again, the enforcement and all of those things, that's a different question. But a person is a person, and they have personhood, they have rights. Parents are parents, and they have rights. And one of those rights is that they are able to have kids and raise their kids and teach them what they want to teach them. Teach them that they're free. Teach them, they have rights to be able to go out in society. States have rights. So personhood, parenthood, statehood, all of those things are really very important to me. And they drive my politics as a commissioner. They drove my politics as a representative. They will drive my politics as a congressperson. And I think if there's one thing that people have learned about me is that I do respond. I'm always, people call up, it's like, I would like to talk to someone in the Lyman campaign. I said, oh, well, you can talk to me. Well, look, I want to get a hold of, somebody, like the campaign manager or the person who's in charge of media. It's like, well, that's me. I'm in charge of all those. And then you're talking to Phil, and they're like, oh, it's like. And I know that your time is limited, but truly, I am on your side. I'm on the side of the people, and that often gets me on the opposite side of the establishment. I mentioned, that I'd gone to jail. I was prosecuted for conspiracy to trespass, and it was a politically motivated hit job by people who did not like me criticizing the BLM. They did not like me telling the truth about what the Bears Ears National Monument was about, which was the Uranium One claims that were being sold to Russia through, all of these things. I tell people it's somehow, it gets lost in translation when I tell them our protest that day was not about a trail. We were protesting Russia, and they just don't quite make the connection. So anyway, I believe in all those things. Hopefully I've, if we're talking about a list, hopefully I've talked about some of the issues. The weaponization of agencies is a really big deal. Supporting President Trump is a really big deal to me. He's doing an incredible job as the president, and he's taking bold action. I loved what he did in Venezuela. I love that. It's like we got respect again in this world, and that's important. I appreciate what he's doing in Iran. And I've made comments about what the powers that we give to this president. If those are the same powers that Gavin Newsom is going to take when he's the president, I will feel very differently about giving them that same leeway. So there's got to be some checks and balances there, but it's not anything criticizing Trump. And the Iranian thing is really interesting. We are looking at a reconfiguration of the Middle East. It's being driven by a much larger, global interests, and I'm glad that we have an ally there. I'm glad that we have an ally in the Middle East. And I think they're an important ally to us. I think Israel is important to us in that respect. And I want to maintain that relationship from an economic standpoint. And then the local issues, the water, the fire, the jurisdictional issues, those are very important to me. I don't know, Jody, is there anything I'm leaving out?
And spending. Spending's a problem. Jeff pointed out that we're going to have the most expensive, fanciest county administration building in the country here pretty quickly.
Yeah, and I do want to turn time over to other people. I've dominated.
That would be great.
Okay, so thanks, Mark, for the questions. Natalie Clausen just came. She was, those who know Natalie. And we are changing things in Utah still. People, after the governor's race, we didn't go away. We kept fighting, and it's not because we're contentious, and it's because there's a fight that's not done yet. And I made the mistake when they asked me in the debate with Spencer Cox, will you accept the results of the election? I said, I'll verify them, whether I win or not. And that we're still on that quest. So.
And final comment, Phil.
Yeah.
What drives your passion about running in Utah?
I should pull up the picture of Augie, my little grandson, but and I did the other day. He's holding a little puppy, and it's like I don't know. My family, my neighbors, my religion, my God, this is America. I think it's the most amazing place. It's the greatest country that's ever existed, and a nation conceived in liberty. And when Lincoln said, we're going to see if this can long endure, and we have, and it's because so many good people put their life on the line. I had a transformational moment at some point in my life when it came to the Constitution, just reading it, and it was about the same time my community was being raided, and I just And I just thought, there's a right way to do things, and this is not the right way. What we're doing is going to lead to negative things for us. But I really do have a tremendous, love for America and for freedom, for liberty, and for, the people that feel the same.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. I would like to ask Jeff if you want to say something for a couple of minutes, and we'll just run down this list.
Jeff Pierce, running for House District 59 to be your next state rep. 7th generation Utah. I love this state. Over the last 10 years, it has not been working for families. We went from one of the most affordable states in the nation to one of the least. I'd urge everyone to read my questionnaire for the Salt Lake Tribune, and I give detailed reasons on why I believe that has happened. However, in this race, my top priority is property tax reform. We have a very serious crisis here in the Wasatch Back, particularly pronounced in Wasatch County. While the root cause is wildly excessive spending, it can be fixed by the state, and I'm the only one in this race to have a year one plan to do so. Under my plan, if you're a primary resident, you're 50 years or older, and you live in Wasatch or Summit County, for taxation, you will pay the lower of what the assessor says your home is worth, and your historical cost escalated to lower 3% or CPI per year. And I would love to say I invented this plan. However, it's the way 17 other states already do it. And in my opinion, it's the only fair way to tax primary residents. Primary residences don't have income that grow with valuations. And what has been going on in this county with their recent spending binge is, in my opinion, it's borderline immoral to be spending people out of their houses. What they've been doing is they've been squeezing blood from rocks every year, and a lot of those rocks are our seniors, and they are breaking. And in my estimation, we're losing about 200 senior households per year to unsustainable property tax burdens that could have never been anticipated. So I'm the only one in this race with a plan, and it needs to happen this year. Just for everyone's benefit, the Wasatch County spending over the last 3 years has gone from $51 million to $130 million. It's nearly a tripling in 3 short years. What I believe has been happening based on conversations I've had is they've been reverse engineering budgets to match valuation increases. Not based on what the community needs, not based on what the community can afford, as we see with the fanciest administration building, I believe, in the history of the state of Utah. It will have $800 per square foot. Their numbers, not mine. Hard costs alone, implied land value makes it much higher. And things have to start changing. What is very much on the ballot this year in my race is whether we even have a crisis in property taxation. I know for a fact we do because I've talked to 2,000 homes, and it's nearly every senior I talk to, and many are in financial distress. It is heartbreaking. My parents are in this room right now. They live in Utah County. They are not suffering from the same spending regime over there as we are here. And I put them in all the shoes of the seniors I talk to. It's truly heartbreaking. Things have to change. The other thing that's on the ballot is whether it's acceptable for lobbyists to fund local candidates in the State House. I'm self-funded. My opponent is heavily funded by lobbyists. That's why you've gotten 7 flyers from him and none from me. But I'm making the rounds door to door. If I haven't talked to you, please reach out. My personal contact information is on here, both my personal cell and an email that I only check. And I know I'm limited in time. Thank you very much. Vote Pierce in this race for change. Thank you.
Perfect. Just gonna go where you are.
So I can be in front of Michelle?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, we had to close it.
I get it, yeah. So many of you may know me, many of you may not, because we're residents of Utah for 13 years, and for the last 3 we've been up here in Hideout. So it's really interesting the way I was invited to run for this office. Really cool. First of all, Air Force Academy graduate, 31 years in the military, in the Air Force. And I was even even a squadron commander at Hill Air Force Base for a couple of years up there flying the F-16. And then ended up, after retirement from that, went to the Salt Lake base here with Delta Airlines and flew with them for a while until their bankruptcy. Went back to the Air Force again, flying F-16s as a civilian, no rank, which was an interesting thing. Then went to fly for the FAA, and I was flying as a test pilot for the FAA until one time I got a phone call from Joe Biden. It wasn't really Joe, but it was his kind of representative, you know, and he said, "You can't work for me anymore unless you get that COVID shot." And I said, "I am not going to get that COVID shot." And I said, yeah, thanks. I've got 40 years as a test pilot. You've spent millions of dollars on my training and my type ratings and all that, and you're willing to let that go?" And he said, yeah, you get the shot or you're out. And I said, okay, I'm out. So that was a forced retirement. That kind of brought us here because we were in a different state. At that time, someone in my church, in my family, they all said, "You need to run for this slot that is being vacated on the county council." I said, "Well, how do I do that?" And so I found out exactly how to do that. So I went through the caucus process, nomination process, and I'm actually the GOP nominee for this position. My opponent is actually just did the signature gathering, maybe couldn't handle the heat, maybe didn't want to go through all the scrutiny. And for my whole career, I've been doing nothing but scrutiny. Some things about what I've been talking to with all of you guys since January. Phil has said it, and Jeff has said it, and it's all the same things about the water, about the bypass going right straight through the middle of the North Fields. Property taxes, huge deal. We've seen homesteads, we've seen ranches, you know, family homes for generations gone. Try not paying your property tax and see what happens to your house. And then just all of these things are happening to include excess development. I've got a plan to do a combination and a comparison between the people that are here, the people that are forecast to be here. We're forecast to double by 2060 for our population. And then we're going to look at the housing units that are already on the books, and we're going to make that comparison. I will be making that comparison. And if that's okay, and we actually need these housing units, how many do we have now that are on the books that aren't built yet? Somewhere around 10,000. So I think we've got a little bit of an excess of building going on here in the whole county. Sherry and I live in Hideout, and there's development going on all around us. There's dust coming into the house all the time for that. So I'm real sensitive to that. And you know, once you pass the muster on, do we actually need your development? Is it going to be water neutral? What's the truth on that if it's going to be water neutral? You're going to tell me, you need to prove that. So that's one of the things I want to do also. One of the last things I want to talk about too is we talked a little bit about the immigration, and I think that's a really big deal. A lot of people that I would talk to doing door knocks and all that, they would say, immigration's not that big a deal for us, you know, the illegal immigration. I point out, what about the money? What about schools? What about this? What about that? And they go, well, yeah, okay, fine. I agree with that. But then you've got the issue of apportionment coming up here when we get to the census. And so the apportionment, everybody understands what that is. That's when they count the census, and the people that they count are humans, not just citizens. So if we had all the illegals in here, we would skew the census based on all the illegals that were here. Last thing I'll talk about too, and this is kind of took the wind out of my sails. This was a door knocking thing, and it had to do with change. And yesterday, I was serving on my security team at my church for Vacation Bible School. Gosh, we had like 400 kids. This was huge. And anyway, we have a really good security team at my church. And one of the ladies came up to me and said, hey, when do we vote? So we talked about all that voting thing. When are you allowed to vote? What's the way that we go vote here in Wasatch County? So we talked about that. And she said, you know, I went to a website here, to a social media site, and found out that somebody who I don't know is voting for you because you represent change. They're ignoring your opponent. And I said, well, that's good to know because that's what I'm all about. And then during the door knocking, I was saying hi to this one lady. We were wrapping up the conversation. And I said, by the way, one of the most important things you can do for me if I'm elected, call me. Get a hold of me, email me, let me know what you're thinking. A lot of people will, you know, get into a position, they'll say, well, now I'm here, I'm going to vote the way I want, and I'm just going to run this show for 4 years for me, you know, and not for the people. And you all know that's true, and you've seen it over and over again. indifferent to maybe Heber City Council, maybe the Wasatch County Council. You've seen that kind of stuff. And I said, call me, let me know. Because how am I going to know how to vote unless I get all this input from the people? I just can't make this stuff up. And she said, you mean you actually care what I think? And that really took the wind out of my sails, but it emphasized once again how important change is right now for this election. That's me. Thanks.
How do I put this on?
You can just hold it if you don't want to clip it.
Okay. Well, thank you. I'm grateful that I was invited to this today, to this meeting, and to meet all of you. I am running for county clerk because local government has to get elections right. And it bothers me to see people worried about transparency and elections being rigged and all of these things. And 5 years ago, I think, or 6 years ago, our county clerk passed away from cancer, and the change was made then. I have been working in elections for 18 years, first at Heber City and now at Park City. And there's always, you can't go from 0 to 100 as soon as you're elected. And so I watched and I observed, and I could see mistakes being made. And I thought, well, next year they will know. Next year they will know state law. And I still see these mistakes being made, and I'm done with it. I have to come back to Wasatch County and make sure that elections are run accurately, efficiently, transparently. Thank you. Just one example is I was just asking Brett Vance here. Brett, did you know when you filed for candidacy and you had put your full legal name that was going to appear on the ballot and not the name that you're known by? And he's like, yeah, they told me I had to get all of these signatures if I went that way, so I had to put my legal name. I'm like, well, your legal name is Brett, William Brett Vance. You could put W. Brett Vance on that, and that would be on the ballot, so nobody would be wondering, who is this William? Is this, you know? And so there's a little confusion with Brett's candidacy. The law was changed a couple of years ago saying you couldn't have nicknames or names in quotes. In Park City, we had this guy run, and he put on his ballot name, David Pickleball Traffic Dobkin. Just because he wanted people to know his stance on pickleball and the traffic in Park City. And the state was like, no, we're not going to allow that anymore. But that wasn't the case with Brett here. Now, if Brett, whose first name is William, went by Bill, he would need 5 people to sign saying, we know him by Bill, and he could have put Bill Vance on the ballot. But that office did not know the state code to give him that information. I want to communicate not just to our voters, but to our candidates. I want to have running for office workshops. I want things to be crystal clear to everybody. I want the state law to be followed. And that is what I'm going to do. I have the experience to do it, and I thank you for your support.
Okay, so these are the candidates that we're supporting for the Republican primary. Jeremy is not my first pick. However, my first pick happens to be here. So I'm going to bring him up so you guys can at least get to meet him. His name is Paul Moore. Paul Moore is the oldest guy, I think, to ever go through the post-academy training. He'll tell a little bit about himself, but he is a constitutional guy, which is important to me. And I met him at the Constitutional Sheriff's event in Las Vegas a couple years ago. And we twisted his arm, and he came up here, fell in love with the Valley, found out that even though he had an extensive law enforcement background, it didn't apply in Utah because we got to protect elected officials, right? So he, at 64 years of age, went through the post-academy with a bunch of 19-year-olds, had to wrestle them and fight them and all of that, and met all of the requirements and the standards. This is Paul.
Wow. What an absolute honor to be here. This is amazing. I didn't expect I was going to speak.
Hey, Paul, can I add a little something for everybody so they understand? Paul is officially on the general ballot as an unaffiliated candidate. So he will not be participating in any primary election. He will be on the November ballot, so it gives everybody the opportunity to get to know him. He is, as Jim said, he is our choice.
Well, thank you for that. As I said, it's an honor to be here. Anybody that's anywhere near 60 years of age, I should be your poster child. And believe me, there was a little pain and suffering that went along with that thing we just pulled off. But for our gracious hosts that put this on the fly, give them a round of applause because this is amazing. Thank you. And then I would absolutely agree with the candidates here and what they're saying. Brett, military people, I'm a United States Marine, and I honor your service and thank you for that. Any other people here that have been in the military, first responders, thank you for your service. I love Ronald Reagan, and I think about him often. I miss him, and I come by that honestly. As a young United States Marine, Reagan was my commander-in-chief. And I remember a story I heard about Ronald Reagan once, and he was going to speak to a group, and he didn't know what to say. And so he went to the First Lady, and he said, I don't know what to say to these people. And she said, just say something warm and gracious and sit down. Later that afternoon, he was seated on the stage next to the podium. They were introducing him to a very large group of people. When the introductions were done, he stood up, he walked the podium, and he paused. He looked at the crowd, and he said, gracious, it's warm in here, and he sat down. Clearly, this is a man that understands the value of brevity. And because I'm not in this race and I want to offer respect to the system, I'm in the general election. I'm grateful for that. But I want to honor all these people that are running and be very brief. Not quite that brief, but brief. So let me talk about the county sheriff. And I've listened to Phil and Brett and others. And there is nothing that, a good county sheriff cannot do to help all of these people do their job in a stellar way to support you. The primary responsibility of a county sheriff is not to be a cop or a glorified chief of police. The primary responsibility of a county sheriff is to stand up for your rights, to protect you, to create a foundation of public safety and public trust, to be transparent, and to have the sole laser focus of service, to create what I call service-oriented policing within not just the sheriff's office, but anybody that operates under the color of authority in Wasatch County. The sheriff has that authority, and they should use it. So you need a sheriff you can trust that will stand up for your rights, that will support all of these people. You're having a problem there in Washington, you call the county sheriff in Wasatch and say, I need to get something accomplished there. The sheriff can help you. The sheriff should be for the community. You should be talking about things that benefit the community because that is your primary focus. It's not being a cop. It's not being a glorified chief of police. It's serving the citizens. You don't take a second job. You're a sheriff 24/7, 365. And when you're elected, it's a contract, an unwritten contract with the citizens that you will serve for 4 years, 24/7, 365, and you're laser focused. You don't have time to do a second job. You got to serve the citizens. That's what the sheriff's job is. So I believe in that strongly. Some other things I believe in is accountability with compassion. I've heard sheriffs over many years say, we put the bad guys where they belong, in jail. No, we hold people accountable with compassion because we can't lose that compassionate side of who we are because that's who we are in Wasatch County, in our great nation, in our state. We have to uphold that compassionate part. I don't believe in taxation by citation. I'm absolutely against that. If you can give somebody a warning that will suffice to encourage compliance, why would you write them a citation? Not to raise revenue. We'll have a bake sale. We'll find some other answer to do that. We're not going to do that on the backs of the citizens. And so everything that a sheriff does should be bent on serving the citizens in the county. That hasn't happened here. And there's culture problems within law enforcement, and there's a lot of them. They need to be fixed. So having a lot of time in law enforcement, being out of it in the corporate world for a time and doing the things that I've done, I've been able to look back and say, hey, things need to change. And that's what we can do here. So Again, I promise to be brief. I'm done talking. If you don't know me, come up and meet me. I'd love to introduce myself to you. For all of you that put yourselves out there to run, God bless you, because as I know, it's not easy. Thank you for being here. Thank you, House.
So as we come to a wrap up, I'd like to thank everybody for showing up on short notice, 30 minutes. I mean, I think it was just amazing with the crowd that we have. The last thing that I want to follow up with is KMMU.com. You can spread the replay. I did interview Paul Moore as the unaffiliated candidate for sheriff. We haven't launched it yet. When Paul and I were talking, in order to be fair, even though Jeremy Hales is our nomination for June 23rd, I would challenge and ask them to do an interview with me, to reach out to me. The same thing for Sheriff Rigby. I think it's just only fair. I'd like to hear all three sides, and I think that the other two owe it to the people of Wasatch Valley. So, Phil, you want to do one wrap up?
Sure. And thanks, Paul. I knew I was looking back there, and I kept thinking I should know exactly who I'm looking at back there, but thank you. Yeah, thanks, Jim and Lori, again. Let's give them another round of applause. And thanks, Bridget, for your role in putting this together. Thank you. Yeah, I honestly, I love little snafus like this where you're like playing the political game, and it kind of emphasizes like, okay, what is government about and where are we at? But it's such an honor. Honestly, it's such an honor to associate with good people. Jody and I have talked about this. When I first got in politics, we very well received in our community, but we saw a few people that started like, going a different direction, and we saw maybe our friend base kind of shrinking a little bit. And then running for state office, it really expanded. And what we found now is that we have the pleasure of rubbing shoulders with some of the best patriots in the entire state. So thank you very much.
And then can we just one shout out to the husbands and wives of the people who are running, because I think it's the backbone of them.
And the last thing that I think I want to say before we let you guys all get out of here is I thought about Phil running as governor and how I feel he was cheated by the system that was put in place specifically to cheat. And it really bothered me. And then it dawned on me that maybe God's plan wasn't my plan. Maybe God's plan is to send him to Washington to start to sort that out. So God bless you, and thank you for running.